we have the wonderful Mark Burbeck, who is the executive director of Our Fight. Thank you. The fantastic Itai Gamrudi, who's the co-founder and director of Stop the Hate UK. You must know him. And the fantastic, I'm surrounded by great people today. Isaac Fatsal-Fati, who is executive director, of Stand With Us. So thank you, gentlemen. So where do we start? I'm going to start with you. We talk a lot about, again, anti-Semitism, and we most all the time measure it in terms of hate crimes. So we think that it's going up because there's more hate crimes. Fantastic. I'd like to know if we need to also measure it in terms of how Jewish participation in civil life is manifesting, because I see us being pushed out. And because we are being pushed out, it means that our voices get silenced, which means that hate crimes increase, and on we go. So what do you, through your organization, because I know you've done fantastic work.
I think maybe this is one of the most important points, because we have a major problem with defining the problem. I think that you all heard plenty of time people trying to define if a specific incident was an anti-Semitic attack, anti-Zionist attack, anti-Israel attack. And the problem is that we are facing a new type of anti-Semitism. And we have difficulties to acknowledge because we are trying to compare it to incidents from 8 years ago and to classify it accordingly. And the main problem is that we are now facing a type of anti-Semitism that is new for us, and it's a political anti-Semitism. If in the past we have a more religious anti-Semitism, and then after we had a more racial anti-Semitism, we are now facing a political anti-Semitism that basically opposing to the self-determination of Jews. If 80 years ago they didn't like the fact that we are spread all over Europe and and North Africa and other areas around the world, and they wanted to put the Jews in one place, once the Jews put themselves in one place, now they want to send them back again. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that first and foremost, we need to define the problem, and we need to understand that anti-Zionism and anti-Israel is not a political issue. We don't need to fall to the trap that they are trying to put us at. And we have to acknowledge that anti-Zionism and anti-Israel, that's the new anti-Semitism, and we need to treat it as such. And I think that once we will do that, everything will fall to the right place, including where is Jewish identity, where is Israel identity, and where is Zionist identity. It's all in the same basket of the new anti-Semitism.
Thank you. Mark, I want to talk about all the protests, because your organization, alongside Stop the Hate UK, has done amazing work. And quite frankly, we need more of those, because you've taken the fight back to them. So I want to know, from your perspective, have you seen a shift in the way that demonstrations are taking place, whether it is our side or the other side? There was just one today. I can see more and more police. I see more and more people being arrested, not necessarily on the right side, by the way. And I see more and more violence and calls for violence. So first of all, what is your experience of it all? And what is it that we're not doing or failing to do or understand in order to make our points clearer? Because clearly somebody's not listening.
So quite a few questions. So I think on the protests themselves, I think they're probably getting smaller. I'll be interested to know what Itai thinks on that, but I think they are getting smaller. And I think the marches, we haven't had a march for ages. If you think back a few weeks ago, everybody was talking about, ban the marches. We don't see them anymore. But I think there's a bigger problem for us, because as Isaac was saying, the problem is a political problem now, and the problem is happening at all different levels of society. So it's almost like they don't need these marches. I think it's a false kind of formula to try and imagine that the marches themselves are driving the climate of anti-Semitism. It's more the other way around, that there is a climate of anti-Semitism, and this is the sort of the sharp end of it, This is the sharp end on the street. The people that we saw earlier up the road, they're the people who are prepared to come out and shout and push people around. But actually, societally, at the level of society, anti-Semitism is top to bottom. I mean, the fact that this event, there were so many people in Parliament who were speaking to try and have this event cancelled. You don't need the protest. You know, when you've got MPs and the Mayor of London coming out and saying that, you know, I mean, I was picturing this earlier in the week. I was thinking, how would you persuade your kids to go to something like this? It's no offence, but it's the most boring event you could imagine. It's real estate. You know, I mean, could you really say, right, kids, get in the car, we're going to... And yet, it's been a national debate. It's been a national debate this week that it shouldn't be happening. It's bizarre. And so I think we do have serious problems in terms of anti-Semitism running top to bottom. In my mind, I picture this as like a Dreyfus moment. It's like you know, what was going on during the Dreyfus affair, in the sense that all sorts of aspects of society were being affected. You know, the police, the way the police are policing, you know, the Maccabi Tel Aviv match, you know, that kind of thing. The way that they're distorting what they're supposed to do, the way that people are calling for IDF soldiers to be tracked when they enter the country. You know, the Muslim Police Foundation saying that, you know, we've got to track Zionists. And Zionists are the biggest threat. So, you know, top to bottom, like I say, all the way through society, this is a massive problem to solve. And the protests, sorry if that wasn't the answer you were expecting, but the protests are the least of our problems, I'm afraid.
I was looking for another answer, so perfect. Thank you so much. Itai, I want to talk to you about, because I know a few months ago, maybe a bit longer than that actually, there was a parliamentary briefing that was done calling for the proscription of the Muslim Brotherhood and the OSGC. So you, alongside We Believe in Israel, did a fantastic job. I've written the policy briefing, so I can say that. Have we moved on? Because I remember quite correctly a certain prime minister of ours saying, yes, you know, we will prescribe. Things are moving in the right direction. I mean, 6 months down the line, nothing has been done. Maybe I'm exaggerating, it's been a bit less. But what is it that we need to do? Because they keep saying yes, because we make all the right arguments, legal and otherwise, but they seem to be quite stuck with the let's move on, let's do the thing that we need to do. They're not doing them. So
look, I think yeah, great. I think that there is a real issue. We have a government that is lacking the political will and the hunger to confront extremism, and let alone, again, we can diffuse the Israel situation, the Jews out of it. Prescribing the IRGC is first and foremost an internal British interest. It's our national security that is on the line. And when I say our, I mean the United Kingdom national security that is on the line. And we have a government that is repeatedly ignoring the facts that are undisputed. I mean, our prime minister stood on a podium and confessed to us that MI5, the last year, have stopped more than 20 attempts for terrorist operations in the United Kingdom, orchestrated and funded by the IRGC. And I ask myself, as a government, what are you waiting for? So you told us that there was an issue with legally getting the decision, but we haven't seen anything moved. And we know exactly why we don't see anything move. We don't see anything move because the base of the Labour government today is no longer in the center or a little bit to the left. Unfortunately, what we see that there is a pursuit to the extreme left in this instance, and that the tail is wagging the dog now. And that's where we are, and that's why we don't have the prescription of the IRGC, and we don't have the prescription, and we will never have the prescription of the Muslim Brotherhood.
well, I hope not, because we're going to push for it. So let's hope. I'm hoping for the best. Isaac, I want to ask you a question because undeniably, maybe you will disagree with me, but October 7th really opened many people's eyes to the reality of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. I think it was already there, to be fair, but suddenly there was an explosion and we couldn't help but see it because it was there. Do you think that we have missed, number one, did we miss the boat very early on? I'm afraid that the answer is yes, but I want to hear from you and why. But do you think that we're still missing something? Because again, October 7th happened, so we were forced to look at things that we didn't want to look at and suddenly discovered a whole universe of hatred. So the question is, do you think that there's more down the road?
It's an evolving process, and we need to look at it from an historical perspective. And let's look at the another point in time, 2021, Operation Guardian of the Walls in Israel, which impacted directly on what's going on. You all remember this motorcade in St. John's Wood, chanting, "We will rape your kids and your daughters," which was another boundary that was crossed, them coming to Jewish neighborhoods, threatening. And obviously then October 7th gave to them what they was waiting for so long, just the excuse to take it to the next level. And since then, we saw it all over. And even after October 7th, we can break it down into specific point on time. So we saw the hunger campaign in Gaza, and we had other points in time that they used as an opportunity to try again, to push the red lines. By the way, what is going on here today, in my opinion, is another very interesting attempt, because this is probably the first time that they're trying to challenge, and I agree with my friend here, a very non-issue event. We are not having an event supporting Israel here. We are not doing something publicly. It's quite regular, and it takes place in a synagogue, which on the spectrum, again, if you want to do this differentiation, takes it more to the religious aspect rather than the national aspect. And still, they found the courage to come here and to challenge us. It happened, I think, a year and a half ago in East Finchley, in the protest next to the cinema, when they came again. So I suggest that we won't treat every incident by itself, but we will look at the timeline of escalation throughout the past few years, and we see how they're trying to push the boundaries again and again and again, to put their finger in the water, to measure the temperature, and to see if they can take it to the next level. That's where we are at. And October 7th, it's another massive incident, but it's on the sequence.
Yeah, it's kind of the boiling of the frog, isn't it? Mark, Itai, I have a question that concerns you both. Because you are one of the few organizations throughout the UK that managed to unite several diasporas, to your credit, because very few people, if at all, have managed to do it. So my question is this. Do you think that the future of fight would be to try to connect to, I would say, greater causes, and maybe not hide, a Jewish life or desire to be Zionist and stand for Israel, but rather try to make people understand that our values are actually their values, and that a lot of the time, if not all the time, we stand for what is good for Britain in general, and America and the rest of liberal democracies. Although I don't like liberalism now because there's a bad taste to it. So what do you think? Do you think that in your experience of uniting the Iranian diasporas and to speak to Christian groups, and other people, for that matter, you've managed to do something quite incredible by way of a coalition. So tell me about this, and tell me how maybe we need to shift a little bit and not hide behind people, but rather show that our cause is universal, really.
Yeah, I do agree. But I think we need both. So the reason I set the campaign up after October the 7th was specifically about anti-Semitism. So I'd already been reading for a number of years, people like Hannah Arendt, and I don't know whether how aware people are for if you're, because obviously a lot of people here are Jewish, but for non-Jews of my age, you do often think, what would I have done during the Holocaust? You know, what would I have been on the right side? So it's something that's perpetually there in your mind. So anti-Semitism as an issue is something that you do think about, yeah? And then as you both were discussing, October the 7th kind of triggers it. So my primary motivation is that anti-Semitism is the worst idea, the most dangerous idea that humanity has created, and because of what we were talking about earlier, the way that it changes policing, it changes our relationships to each other, it changes whether you can hold a real estate event on a Sunday, it actually transforms society. So to me, that's the number one issue, anti-Semitism. However, I agree with you that when you're campaigning, a way to start talking to people is to say, well, look, you know, the Maccabi Tel Aviv issue, that's an example of anti-Semitism, but it's also an example of how the police are not treating people fairly. And then interestingly enough, as I then campaign more and more, I actually realized Jews were pretty good people, you know. And I actually realized that some of the values that we're all worried about losing, like patriotism, like courage, like our young people having civic responsibility, taking pride in things. I go to Israel, and I've never been to Israel before, and suddenly all of these things are writ large. So I agree with you, we need both, but for me, anti-Semitism is this fundamental historic problem. And I do feel that we are now seeing it re-emerge in a historic way.
So I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree because until the 7th of October, I'm going to tell you a secret. I marched on all the BLM marches. I went to all the lefty events. I went and took on Just Stop Oil and all the rest of them. And I really, really wholeheartedly believe that if we Jews will just understand a bit more suffering of others, they will understand our suffering as well. But then the 7th of October came, and like any other Zionist lefty, I discovered that the left has abandoned us. So no, I'm not hiding anti-Semitism, and I'm not hiding how I feel. On the contrary, I now demand equal rights wherever I go, because I don't trust anyone outside my community to understand what's going over me. And that's not to say that there is no great people. I mean, Mark and the amazing people of our fight and the Iranian diaspora that we found are beacons of light in a very, very dark world. But I'm done putting Jewish rights on the back burner because somebody else is suffering.
We are suffering, we are bleeding, we are being under constant attack, and nothing will change it until we, the Jewish people, stand up, confront the situation head on, and bring about the change, or we pack our bags and we won't be here. Because there is no two ways about this. We cannot keep on turning the other cheek and expecting things to be different. So, yeah, that's...
Amen to that. Thank you very much, Mark, Itai, Isaac. Thank you for coming here. Take care, everyone.